Tithes from Abraham, Hebrews 7, 4 through 8. We've been learning from the book of Hebrews. We've been learning about Jesus being in the priesthood. While he is awesome and above all, he gives us the promise of the hope of salvation. In Hebrews 5:6 and 7:17, it talks about many things there. It talks about what makes Christ able to be in the position of the priesthood. He is elevated to the highest rank that there is. And there are many things. He himself is the priest in the order of Melchizedek's priesthood. In Hebrews 7, 1 through 3, it talks about Melchizedek's priesthood. And we've learned from these verses many of these things, many of the details that we can compare them. They were both kings of righteousness, and they both had no beginning and they had no end. And we've learned this and discussed these comparisons between these two priest kings. We've used something called typology to do this, and it's helped us to understand and compare them better, Christ and Melchizedek. Are they equal, though? No, they're not. Christ is always higher. And the reason that we can compare them is because Christ and Melchizedek, in chapter 7, it discusses that the writer took information that was written down in Genesis 14 by Moses. He didn't add anything to it. Moses never wrote down about Melchizedek's birth or about his death. So we look to each of them and we see that neither had a beginning or an end. Now, God knew this. And so God knows that Christ would be the greatest priest ever, greatest in the priesthood, above Aaron, above any of the Levites. He knew this, and he chose not to speak through Moses to write about Melchizedek's birth or his death. And that way we would have this comparison of Christ and Melchizedek. Christ is high above everyone, high above Melchizedek. In Hebrews 7, 4 through 6, it says that Jesus is way above Melchizedek, and Melchizedek was above Abraham. But Abraham had been blessed by the Lord in the original Old Covenant, many promises to him. But Abraham still gave to Melchizedek. Now understand, there was no law that required Abraham to give tithes to Melchizedek. There was a law about the Levites, and they did have to collect tithes. They were commanded to do this. It was in the law. But there was none for Abraham to give his tithe to Melchizedek. Melchizedek, wow, he was a great man. He didn't have to think about the law, though. He wasn't commanded to collect tithes, so he didn't need to think about that. He wasn't from the group of Levites. And Abraham, he didn't have to give to him. Now, let me show you here about Melchizedek, how he is being so great. And he is compared to Christ, but Christ is always greater. Christ is the perfect priest king who serves in the line of Melchizedek. Now, let's apply this to our life. Christ, Jesus, he loves us, and God, he makes plans and he never messes it up and says, let's start over and do a new one. He doesn't do that. He doesn't mess up. He follows through with his plans. He meant for us to have this comparison of Melchizedek and Christ, and it came together flawlessly. He cares about the past and the present and the future, and we applaud him for that. His lordship over all of us, for all of eternity, we applaud him. And he shows us how. Well, he shows this through showing us his open plan, his perfect open plan through history. Now, some people, even Christians, they think that history up to now isn't really important. They even say the Old Testament, just do away with it, it's not important. But no, they say we need to focus on the New Testament only. No, they say that's the only thing important. That's not right. If we want to understand the New Testament, we need to read the Old Testament so we will understand clearly the New Testament, and vice versa. The perfect example is Melchizedek. We learn a little about him in the Old Testament, but the New Testament expounded more on him. Now remember, in history, God cares about history. If you divide that word, you have his story, Christ, his story. And that's the story that we need to hear. And we can learn about that in both the Old and the New Testament. Quorum Deo.